Okay, we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final episode of this season of SWARMathon. My name is Banazad Ismaili, and I'm here with my wonderful co-host, Ann Cantera. Today, we are celebrating a milestone, a SWARM community. We have passed 500 YouTube subscribers, and so, for those of you joining us for the first time, Swarmathon is a monthly series exploring how AI intersects with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. Each episode, we dived into a different theme with amazing change makers from around the world. And we went through all the SDGs except for SDG 7 and SDG 14 that we are covering today. So, as always, a quick reminder, the UN's 17 SDGs cover everything from no poverty, zero hunger, to clean energy and sustainable cities. And you can check out the full list in the link that I've shared in the comments to the UN's website. And this month, we are focusing on affordable and clean energy, SDG 7, and life below water, SDG 14. These two goals highlight both the urgency of the clean energy transition and the need to protect our oceans and marine ecosystems. And as we will see today, AI has the potential to accelerate progress on both fronts if we do it responsibly. So, and a quick note, today is the last episode of this series, but don't worry, we'll be back soon with a new season of SWARMathon featuring fresh topics and incredible speakers. So stay tuned for the next. And besides that, if you want to watch our previous episodes, please check out our YouTube channel. Also, I put the link in the comments, and please support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel. And would you like to add something about Designathon?
Yes, of course. This month, the 27th of September, we have a huge show with Reuben Cohen and some of his builders that he works with that are actually designing the things that everybody is just sort of talking about. He builds swarms, and he's coming on this swarm community designathon, which is super exciting to me. I kind of plug him as one of the most important follows on LinkedIn if you're building those types of AI products. And then we will have our last episode of the season in October to be announced. And given all that, I would just like to thank our panelists for coming on today. I live on an island, so what's happening in the oceans is literally something I see from every direction. I live maybe a quarter mile from the water, and I've seen some funky stuff. So I would definitely can't wait to dive in. And Robin, if you would just start by introducing yourself, and we can go around and everybody can do a self-introduction. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure, really happy to be here. So my name is Robin. I'm an environmental lawyer based in New York and currently a Global Goals Ambassador for SDG 14, Life Below Water, with the UN Association. And I've been really passionate about AI governance for a long time. I was on the editorial board of the Yale Journal of Law and Technology, and just really great to be here with this fabulous team.
Thank you, Robin. Who wants to go next? We can go to Alex.
Alex Peterson, calling in from Washington, D.C. I'm a senior account manager with TigerCom. We do marketing, communications, and PR for clean energy and clean tech companies. So really interesting topic, and one that's very close to what I do every day. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, Alex. Harsha?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Harsha Srivatsa. I'm based in Fremont, California, and currently work as an AI product builder at a company called NanoKernel, whose main focus is to build AI micro data centers, which is the scaled down version of the big data centers that you see, and try to democratize AI compute and infra for companies of all sizes. I describe myself as an AI professional, product builder, product manager. Been working with AI about 7 to 8 years now, starting with IBM. I'm IBM Watson. Now across manufacturing, across finance, insurance, healthcare, and now on to real technology infra and the sustainability aspects. So excited to talk about my close-up insights and experience with what it takes to deliver AI and the costs and impacts that comes with it.
Thanks, Harsha, Lydia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lydia Samuels, and I am a Master's of Public Health candidate at the Columbia Mailman School of Public Health, calling in from New York. It's pretty windy here today. My research focus is on climate and health, specifically as it regards to small island developing states. And I myself am from a small island developing state. I'm from the island of Jamaica, and a lot of my research and the trajectory of it has been shaped by my experiences there.
Thank you, Lydia. Okay, so let's start a discussion with the first topic. So, which is clean energy narratives and public trust. So, Alex, let's start with you. You work at the intersection of clean energy and communications. With the power of storytelling, impacting like people's communities' uh, attention to this matter, how can AI tools help shift public narratives and build trust around renewable energy adoption?
So it's interesting. I read about as much clean tech, clean energy news as anybody, and I thought this was a fascinating topic because over the last year or so, the big topic in clean tech news has been what are we going to do about all these data centers, because the projected demand is massive. So it's really interesting. People have been worrying, are data centers just going to gobble up all of the new renewable energy supply that we're going to build over the next few years? And so there's that concern, but I think at the same time, there's so many different ways that it can help. Are these data centers going to be flexible? If they're not pulling from the grid 24/7, then they could actually be something of an asset, something of a benefit for adding renewables to the grid. Large, flexible sources of demand could be a good thing for renewables. Having big tech have a stake in utility reform or permitting reform, that could be a good thing. Big tech could accelerate these next-gen clean tech things like advanced geothermal or small modular nuclear reactors. There's just a bunch of different ways that are really exciting. Virtual power plants, AI and robotics and drones as drivers of battery advances. But when it comes to communications, the AI that we have today, really like specifically the LLMs, they're especially helpful for certain roles. We've all seen, you've probably talked about how they really enhance the productivity of coding. This is definitely also true for communications and PR. It's like one of those roles that it really fits well for. So it allows one person with good strategy to perform a greater number of tactics. A good communications campaign, it has to start with good strategy. You need to have a clear idea of your objective and what audience you need to persuade to achieve that objective and what message is going to persuade them. And AI can help with that, but that's a skill that takes knowledge and experience and conversations with the right people who are actually on the ground. But once you've got that strategy figured out and you're on the level of tactics and execution, AI can really help you get a lot more done. It helps with the writing, it helps with the research, it helps with the organization. Your press releases, your pitches, your thought leadership and social media content, your research on that content, your journalists and your research on the news outlets, and none of these things you want the AI to do all the thinking for you, but it can help you get there a lot faster. And so it's a great tool for like if you want to instantly break writer's block. I don't advise you start your writing with an LLM, but it's very useful when you're stuck. It can help you be creative in a million different ways. So like a great example is give me 10 examples of what are some 10 headlines that I could come up with for this topic, or give me 10 questions that somebody might ask. They're not all going to be good, but there could be something that you didn't think of. And it's also really helpful for organization. If you're doing more things, you're going to have to be communicating with more people. You can write a memo more quickly. You can write an email more quickly. So basically what I'm saying is AI is really good at increasing your productivity. If you have like a good strategy and a good goal in mind, you can just get more done. So it increases the productivity of a comms professional. And SDG 7, the clean energy transition, it's a transition. So it's not just about building, it is about replacing. And there's a whole fossil fuel economy out there. And so what's interesting about this dynamic is there's also fossil fuel incumbents who are going to be using AI, who of course they're already using it. So there's communications happening on both sides, and the fossil fuel incumbents, they're going to use it, in their communications efforts to try and slow down the transition. But what's interesting about AI is there are a few big fossil fuel companies, and there's a long tail of many smaller clean energy and clean tech companies. And because it enables a small teams to be so much more productive and effective, by its nature, it does more to help that long tail. It does more to help the disruptors. So that's how I see it helping shift the narrative. Is it's helping these clean tech companies, clean energy companies communicate more effectively and get their messages out there more effectively.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I totally agree that it's gonna help like communicate the ideas more effectively and being more convincing for people to follow those ideas. And so the question that came to my mind was that so what are the safeguards that are essential for AI in this? Sorry. How can, let me tell it like this. How can storytelling inspire like global action across both energy and like the role that AI can play in countering like misinformation and like other fake news and stuff around this?
Yeah. So what I was just talking about is more about a lot of what I focus on in my day to day is like companies need to explain the value of what they're doing to investors and to customers and to some extent prospective employees. And then there's also there's the policy side of things. So companies and their trade orgs and nonprofits, they all need to explain to policymakers what laws and regulations need to be changed. And policy makers need to explain to voters. But then I think what you're getting at is like it's really important right now is community engagement. So a big part of what's happening with clean energy is clean energy needs to get built all over the place. And that means a lot of localities need to give their permission. And right now that's not going as well as we would like it to go. Often these permits are not granted. 15 to 20% of counties have some sort of ban or restriction in place against renewables in the US. And that's a growing thing. It's a relatively new phenomenon. A lot of that's driven by misinformation. So companies need to counter some of the misinformation that's out there. They need to build trust and show transparency. If it feels like it's coming out of the blue, people are going to be more resistant. But if there's been a transparent communication effort that clearly communicates the benefits that are being brought, people are going to be more open to it. So again, to talk about, it's these companies, they're not as well resourced as the fossil fuel companies that have all this experience going out and doing this development. And also by its nature, we're talking about many more projects in many more places to build the same amount of capacity, to build the same amount of energy supply. because it's distributed by its nature, clean energy. So it's really important to have this sort of leveling nature of AI is really helpful. And then like in the broader sense, beyond like the company perspective, which is what I tend to focus on, you could think about like just the in the movement sense. It still has this nature where it empowers the long tail, right? So it disproportionately helps the many who have few resources to communicate effectively. It lowers the barrier to good communication. So that means it makes it easier for somebody who has a really good idea to turn that into a great piece of content that can quickly spread, right? So that means we don't have to wait necessarily for industry leaders or some like big nonprofit or something like that to get a great message out there. So maybe that means more action on the community level. So more of the good stuff like beach cleanups or local recycling programs or improving stormwater management for the ocean side, or forming a community solar co-op for clean energy, or pushing for more people should focus on what the Public Utility Commission does. Okay, everyone, public utility commissions.
Yeah.
But ultimately, my point is AI, I think, can, because it has that leveling effect that really empowers the long tail, especially that it empowers the few that have less resources. I can imagine that it means you can have much more of a grassroots approach be more effective.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Alex. So, Harsha, you've led transformative AI projects in energy and infrastructure. So, from your perspective, how can AI accelerate the clean energy transition while keeping it cost effective and sustainable at the same time?
A great question, Manas. So I like to start by first principles thinking. And let me start off by saying there's so many people out there who use ChatGPT on an ongoing basis for several hours a day. And now there are so many people of all ages who are using Google Gemini's Nano Banana to do cute and great things. That's all great. It's productivity out there. It's some fun out there. But what does it really take to deliver those exciting and fun stuff in AI? So we have to ask ourselves the question that AI innovation is exponentially being delivered. AI adoption is phenomenal. It's a global thing, and almost, I think, everyone on the planet has heard of AI or ChatGPT, and people are beginning to use it in so many different ways. But that's only the start, right? We are only looking at digital AI. There is a whole new wave of physical AI that's coming, one which I'm going to be focusing on very clearly. So physical AI will be the integration of AI into real life, real impact, like the AI plus IoT and sensors and robotics. So we are looking at even more exponential in terms we cannot think of. But all this comes at a cost of resource usage, and the resource usage is both fixed and it's recurring. So in order to deliver these AI innovations, we need a backbone of AI infrastructure, which consumes land, which consumes materials, which consumes construction, and all the precious rare minerals which go into building electronics and chips. I'm not even going into e-waste and recycling, that's beyond, but there's so much consumption. And then in order to run this and deliver this fantastic user and end user experience, there's enormous consumption of clean energy and water, right? To make the hardware and the algorithms and the compute work. And then these data centers, they produce so much heat, they need to be cooled down. Otherwise, they will not run effectively, or they'll just blow up. But this brings a very important analysis question. How do we keep pace with delivering continuous AI innovation, but also take into account responsible resource usage? And we cannot take the availability of resources like energy and water, which is a finite amount, we cannot take that for granted. So my thinking and motivation here is we should be using AI to optimize AI. Right from the beginning, we should be aware that we have a duty and responsibility for responsible usage that should be ingrained in both the end users as well as the companies that are delivering it. It's easier said than done. A lot of companies are more profit oriented than purpose oriented. So it's going to be a real tough battle. We need legal experts, governance experts to do it. But at the same time, we have to ensure that it's going. And energy is definitely the most important or most needed resource. The energy infrastructure today, I think it will get to a point where it simply cannot deliver the growing AI needs. So what do we do then? The two options. The first option is what I'm doing is to find ways to optimize and perhaps reduce or even get very good insights of where is all this energy thing going. Is it the hardware? Is it the compute? Is it the satisfying user demands? Can we go with smaller language models rather than big language models? Can we train LLMs more efficient? Those are all techno-functional aspects, but at some time we have to be forward thinking by saying, if we are going to deliver this awesome AI innovation, this is what it would take to do it. And can we be guaranteed that we will get what it takes in terms of resources, compute, in order to deliver that? I think we'll get to a point where we simply cannot continue to expand on these infrastructure. Somebody brought up the fact that a data center in Phoenix is just tap all the groundwater resources, right? And and if it's not available, then we'll go to a point where you cannot cool, and the data centers is basically going to be dead. So it's a trade-off situation that happens. I think one which we, as smart people, and also with the tools that are available, AI is now doing so much productivity stuff. It's helping in the environment, help delivering molecules. So I think definitely, as an optimist, we can leverage AI to make a better AI and the word responsible takes on a bigger meaning when you say responsible AI. So it's responsible to the people, responsible to the environment, and even responsible to the innovators. So yeah, let's see what happens when the AI takeoffs becomes exponential, and can we deliver it responsibly, and can we ensure its foundational survival or not?
Yeah, thank you, Harsha. So, I have this question. Like, I've been hearing that, like, they can't use ocean's water to cool down data centers. So, is that true? Like, can you explain a little, like, why they can't use ocean waters and like how it works? Like, I have no idea.
Yeah. It's not entirely true. Companies like Microsoft do have submerged data centers where they have like a huge data center in a box in a container, and they do submerge it in oceans and do the cooling. However, it's more of a technology thing. The ocean water is a medium, has salts in it, so it's not a very good effective in pulling the heat away. So specialized cooling systems, especially like in nuclear reactors, you need specialized ionized water, which is better conductive of heat and this thing. So it's more of a technology problem. But in certain situations, you can use the ocean. But the thing is, it comes with some implications of environmental pollution, right? So if you are using ocean water either as a coolant pumped into the data centers or submerging data centers, what are you doing with the water? What are you doing with possibly hazardous things that are going there? And as I said, I'm more of the person who thinks that instead of using the oceans to cool it, generate less energy in the first place, less heat, and less in need for cooling. We need to be more efficient at the root rather than seeking a bandage for the problem that we are creating.
Yeah, thank you so much, Harsha. Where do you see the most immediate potential for AI in SDG 7, clean energy?
Question for me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So we need to, as I said, uh, we need to forecast what in the energy demands it would take to continuously deliver AI innovation. As I said, physical AI and other forms of AI is coming. There is no stopping that. And the question is, can we use existing forms of proven and existing forms of energy sources like nuclear energy or even coal energy and other things in a better, responsible way? And renewable energy is an iffy thing. It may or may not, deliver the demand that is required. But again, the equation is pretty simple. Know what you're getting into, know what the demands are, know what's available, and optimize the overall consumption and usage. And don't take energy as a granted thing. It's not something that's infinitely available. There's a finite amount. And if you want to bring more and more of that stuff, it comes at an enormous cost. And at some point of time, both technologically and infrastructure wise, it's simply not possible. It simply we cannot build more energy delivery sources, distribution, management, just because AI is exploding and someone wants to make very cute, videos and this thing of, cute videos, cute images of, cats doing all kinds of things. So, yeah, so it's a more of a trade-off policy equation and a very new take on what it means to be energy responsible.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Harsha. So it takes me to the next section of our talk, which is about justice, law, and climate governance. So, Robin, your background bridges human rights and environmental law. With AI playing a bigger role in governance, how can it strengthen rather than undermine climate and ocean policy?
So that's a great question. I think Harsha raised some really good points about rare earth minerals. So with these data centers and with this technology really taking off, there's so much demand for rare earth minerals. And one thing I've been watching international law that's concerning is kind of the debate around deep sea mining. So essentially disturbing the seabed to get more rare earth minerals. And the concern is this is one of the most biodiverse ecosystems in the world. It could also be kind of a form of climate colonialism of these wealthy corporations coming into potentially poor regions of the world and mining the seabed with kind of unknown ecological effects. So that's one concern I have. We need to find a way to get rare earth minerals from one proposal has been e-waste and landfills. There's also a really fascinating paper recently on like metal mining in the US actually has a lot of, they actually have rare earth minerals we could use potentially that was underestimated in the past. So there's a lot of justice and equity concerns around how we mine rare earth minerals. Additionally, energy is a huge issue. With the submerged data centers Harsha mentioned, there's been some proposals to use like wave or tidal energy to have like really clean power that also is right there if you're in a submerged data center, so you don't have to worry as much about transmission. So that's something that I think I hope to see in the future, really responsible local renewable energy for these data centers. I'm originally from Tennessee, and there's been some controversy over Grok. The Twitter AI has a data center in Memphis that's been really kind of a burden to the local predominantly Black community. This is a community that also several years ago fought the Byhalia pipeline. And so this technology can be really transformative, but we also need to make sure no one's left behind and we have the appropriate governance over it, that it's not kind of perpetuating these patterns of environmental racism and injustice. But turning towards, I'm kind of an optimist. I'm kind of an optimist myself. So I think there are a lot of ways it can be really transformative. One is the Allen Coral Atlas, which is this really amazing resource using satellite data, remote sensing data, and machine learning to monitor coral reefs globally And the IUCN and the Allen Institute for AI are also partnering to bring AI to countries in the global south to monitor illegal fishing as part of the new BB&J treaty, which is just like one of the really extraordinary developments in environmental law recently. Just reached 60 ratifications. So it'll be going into force early next year. And that's been an effort that was decades in the making to better govern the high seas. So there's a lot of smart people working on this. And I think it's a space where there's so much opportunity for growth and so much opportunity for good.
Yeah. So what are the what are the most urgent legal safeguards and to prevent like the misuse out of this?
Yes, that's a great question as well. So the issue I see with the legal system is it just doesn't move as quickly as the technology. So there's a concept for those of you with like a background in biology called the Red Queen hypothesis, which is from Alice in Wonderland. Alice in Wonderland for the math nerds is actually like all about math. It's kind of fascinating, but um, it's basically Alice has to run as fast as she can just to keep up with the Red Queen. And that's kind of how I see on the legal side, like we need to run as fast as we can just to keep up with this technology. So there's been some progress in the UN system. There was a resolution in, I want to say around March 2024 to better govern AI instead of having it govern us. And there is a lot of progress in this space. There's also the BB&J Treaty I mentioned and UNCLOS, the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, typically don't have really specific language around AI, but they have articles around technology transfer and sharing. So that's one concern I have, is that this technology won't be as accessible, it won't be affordable to some of the countries that most need it. So I think that could be a really valuable governance framework to ensure that it gets like where it's most needed. Yeah, great question.
Sure. Thank you. So, anyone wants to add something to that?
Yeah, I would like to add something, and I'm piggybacking on Robin's excellent point. When you look at, if you look at Robin's title about global and sustainable goals, I'm we have to think about the fact that AI inequality is going to be a very stark reality, and it is inevitable. So there are going to be regions in the world where they're going to be so AI advanced, for example, North America, China, and there are going to be regions in the world where they perhaps will be AI Luddites. And it is the nature of the beast, right? There's some regions of the world simply cannot build the infrastructure. They don't have the resources, they don't have the money, or even the energy thing to build it and deliver it. Other regions, other countries which are the forefront may do it at the expense of other parts of the world. Like lithium is only available in maybe Chile and I think another maybe Africa or something. So we could be having all the benefits and joys of AI related productivity and communications while causing damage, this thing. So a global perspective and view is needed. And, when you say global goals and sustainability, I think we have to think about what at planet scale, what it means to take and ask the question, can we make AI equally available and, to the whole populace, the whole planet, instead of science fiction, worst case scenarios where AI runs amok. And if you notice the movie Terminator, they only show North America as being devastated by Skynet, right? So we have to see that. But overall, I think thinking along the lines of governance, we have to understand that AI inequality should be addressed somehow, and people from all parts of the world should benefit somewhat equally, if not the same.
Yeah, exactly. That's where we can exactly let go to Lydia's expertise about equity for vulnerable communities. So how we can, Lydia, your work focuses on climate and health equity, especially for vulnerable communities. So how do you see AI supporting resilience in coastal and small island states?
Oh, first, before answering, I'd just like to thank everyone for providing their very valuable perspectives. It's very refreshing to see more positive outlooks on AI, especially as a student and as someone who is on the receiving end of these technologies, being a resident of a small island developing state. Now moving into the question, I see a lot of emerging potential with AI in terms of environmental slash climate induced disasters and the mitigation of those things. For example, as was mentioned previously, the tracking of coral health using AI has become like pretty prominent. It's more so hmm, I won't say preventative measure, but like a mitigation measure, as that's usually employed when at least some coral death has already taken place, which is very important, I believe, for small island developing states. As reefs are particularly important to like the fishing industry, which we benefit a lot of. Benefit a lot from economically, as well as just providing a barrier towards hurricane and rough waves, as we're most of us are islands, and we don't have much of a barrier from water-based natural disasters. On top of that, there's also recent technology called ADIS, ADIS, in the creation. I think the Ocean Conservancy is working on that currently. It's supposed to be cost effective. It's a small little device that attaches to the back of a ship, and it basically takes pictures and identifies like plastic in the water. And when the ship gets closer or docks, it uploads the data to like a central cloud of the ADIS system, and it syncs up basically with different regions of the world. So now you get like a big map of like where pollution is most prominent, and that could also be beneficial given the unequal distribution of environmental goods and bads, especially when it comes to global pollution in small island developing states. On top of that, I also think that it would just be beneficial for us to not only look at AI in a not less harmful, but in a positive light, as well as considering the negatives by incorporating more local knowledge in tandem with AI, not just coming and introducing a foreign or unfamiliar thing to people within these contexts.
Yeah, thank you, Lydia. So, what risks do frontline communities face if excluded from AI-driven solutions?
Well, if we can look at history, with the advent of any type of thing that generates capital, we face a lot of risks of being excluded, which I think was mentioned previously, considering that AI is projected to create a inequality of sorts, especially with who has access to AI and AI technology, who is able to consistently produce and use and adjacently benefit from the outcomes of these new technologies that are assisted by AI. Additionally, I think that when designing intervention in that involves AI in any regard or any intervention really, we have to consider how we approach it, especially from an ethnographic standpoint. If we are to think of environmental sustainability and climate vulnerable populations, we have to think of how we define sustainability, because is something truly sustainable if the population it's being tested on will not be able to be self-sufficient after the researcher moves on, or after the researcher removes him or herself or their selves from the context in which the thing is being studied. So I think in terms of looking at equity as well, we have to ask ourselves the questions when we're going into certain contexts and implementing AI interventions. What implications does this have for the population, not only on an economic and geopolitical level, but also on a cultural level, given that we chose this population for a reason. Clearly, they fit the mold for what we want to test, how we want to advance our technology, and what we will get out of it. But how will it in turn benefit? How will the benefits trickle back down to the community that helped us establish this specific intervention in the first place? I'm not sure if that made much sense. That was kind of a tangent.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. Thank you. Anyone wants to add?
Yeah, I really agree with the importance of local knowledge. A couple years ago, I was talking to this really amazing research scientist, Dr. Tanya Berger-Wolf. She runs like Wild Me and Wild Book, and she basically uses like image recognition software to ID individual animals. So like the underside of a humpback whale tail or the zebra stripes are like our fingerprints. So you can actually track individuals. And she was working with communities in East Africa to basically show them her software and enable them to like track and count the zebra population locally. So that's a good example, but that was something she really talked about, was to be sustainable, you need to be able to implement these technologies in the ground and not just like kind of swoop in and take over essentially.
Yeah, that was interesting.
I have a question for everybody. It's a simple question, but it's probably a wow factor question. Um, Tech titans are never held accountable for anything, right? We see Zuckerberg get off. I'm going to give some money to this politician, and they're going to ignore the fact that I'm objectifying children and this, that, and the other thing. They're never held accountable. They pay their way out of everything. So how is this going to be different given the stakes are so much higher? Uh, Discuss.
Thanks.
Yeah, let me take a stab at that. So I recently thought a lot about what Anne said and wrote a LinkedIn article about, do companies need to have some kind of a oath or accountability responsibility, like how doctors have the Hippocratic oath, right? Do companies need to have some kind of an oath so that they are held, they work towards responsibly delivering AI products to end users in such a way that it does not endanger them? There is some trust and safety, correct? So like Facebook's chat, it's really mind-blowing that they allowed sexually explicit conversations with children to happen, and simply I find that unacceptable. And it's not that it is a byproduct, it was known. It was known to the executives, and yet they chose to go with it. However, there is so the risks from having AI is along the lines of known knowns and known unknowns. So that there are risks that we know, and there are risks that may come down the line which we don't know. But let's set that aside. So I think the whole approach to risk is very lighthearted. It's not taken very seriously at the cost of delivering innovation and somehow cash on this bubble and make as much money as you can, right? And somehow get users all over the world addicted to this new technology. It is a level of addiction which I've seen far surpasses social media, far surpasses the internet. And while we can live without phones, I think, and maybe less so with internet, I think the ramifications are so much that we have to take the risk into account. Like, is it going to make us dumber? Is it going to lead to cognitive decline? If we are going to get used to do the kind of communications that we do with AI, can we go back and fall back to having effective communications if AI was not there, right? Can we solve math problems with it? So it's going to be an existential thing that if somehow AI vanishes, it's gonna create such a big vacuum. and maybe there'll be more, what shall I say, less cognitively capable humans than before. And I definitely see it in the younger generation now. They're using it for everything. They're not questioning, they're not doing independent research. Everything is the chat GPT this, chat GPT that, and they're taking it as gospel, right? We all know that AI is hallucinating, it can make up stuff, or at the best creatively inaccurate. But if we take that as word, are we creating a false illusion for ourselves? And that could lead to a large scale decline in research thinking. In fact, it could have a very deleterious effect on AI innovation itself, because we may not be able to deliver the new things that are required. Maybe AGI may not be able to do it if we don't have the brightest minds to do it. So yeah, the risk factor is such an important thing. And people who work with AI should, like myself, should be very cognizant of it and have an oath like thing, or have a responsible way of doing it. And it behooves social workers like Lydia to make sure that they understand the implications and make the messaging, and have a system of legal systems in place, the laws, the governance inside, and make for a better future, not a dystopian or convoluted future that comes about. So we need to think about that. AI is only an augmentation; it is not a replacement. And artificial intelligence doesn't make sense if the people who consume it with natural intelligence don't have the level to appreciate the effective use of AI.
I can also take a jab at that question if no one else wants.
Sure, go ahead.
I think also in terms of like holding big tech accountable. So I think it was also mentioned previously, but in terms of the environmental effects of like those AI data centers, uh, as mentioned before, it's not entirely true that you're not allowed to use ocean water to for cooling purposes. Um, what happens is a few data centers close to the coast, they will use ocean water to cool down the centers, and then they will dump it back into the ocean. And what that causes is thermal pollution. And the thermal pollution is extremely dangerous given climate change, especially because the ocean already absorbs so much heat. You're adding to the heating of the oceans, and you know how you'll see on like Instagram or Facebook or wherever of like, oh, certain wildlife is coming up or marine life is coming up deceased on shores, like thousands of dead fish. A lot of those fishes or a lot of those marine deaths happen from dead zones, which is the decreased, like specific pockets in the ocean where oxygen is severely decreased due to phenomena or incidences of thermal pollution. So that is like AI data centers, especially their locations, as well as the use and dumping, continuously use and dumping of that resource, it creates a very violent, I would say, system that continues over and over again. And it'll get to a point, I know this is probably like really cynical. It'll get to a point where like you can't buy your way out of the impacts of climate change. You can't buy your way or escape certain climate induced disasters or effects of climate change that are, I won't say inevitable, but are likely to occur given how um, widespread it is. Like, there's only so much that your monetary access can get you in terms of climate change. At the end of the day, everyone will experience it, obviously, on unequal playing fields, but it's only a matter of time before we're all in uncomfortable or situations that do have direct impacts on our daily lives, regardless of how much money we have or how much we can pay to avoid it. So that's my take on, oh, yes, you can pay your way out of it, but for how long before it's on your doorstep?
A great point. Thank you, Olivia. And it's so sad that it's happening and there is no like public awareness about it. So, and I don't know, I think it's when we get the consequences, that's when we start like taking action. And when it's like not affecting our lives directly, we're not doing anything. And that's very sad to hear that it's happening. And these are because as a result of these actions.
Yeah, we do a terrible job at protecting our children from tech giants. So I can't
Yeah.
imagine the environment unless it directly impacts profits, which I'm sure it will when we're all dead. But no, I'm just kidding. It will to at some point it will affect profits, and I'm afraid that only at that point is when it will be taken seriously. So my concern is, how do we create that change before it's necessary?
Can I just inject a little optimism here? I think these are very valid concerns, like what you're bringing up. But let me flip this a little bit. So, because the way that I've been thinking about this is there's a positive side to the serious power of big tech here, and the role that they're playing. This is something I've been thinking a lot. It's been on my mind because I was just at RE Plus, which is the big renewable energy trade show. It was out in Las Vegas last week. 40,000 people. And we just had the IRA, the big climate bill, just got shredded. So in that context, you would think that it would be kind of pessimistic, but actually it's pretty optimistic feel. And that's largely because we're in this context where, well, first of all, just like the technology just gets better and better and better. And so the economics of wind and solar and batteries have never been better. But also we're in a context where there's growing electricity demand where there hasn't been in the US for a long time. And basically the AI means that they need power, they need it fast. And fundamentally, the best way that they can get it and get it quickly is through renewables. Like the gas industry is trying to figure out a way to serve all these data centers, and they can't do it fast enough. They can't build the turbines fast enough. And like they know it, and big tech knows this. And so if they want to win the AI race, they need solar and storage to play a major role. And so what that means is now all of a sudden we've got like the biggest industry in the world, right? All of a sudden has a huge vested interest in figuring out how to break down these barriers that are blocking the development of renewable energy. And there are a lot of barriers where it's like the whole energy economy has kind of been built around fossil fuels. So there are so many different ways in which these systems are designed for big centralized power plants, the way that the grid is set up, the way that energy development is set up is biased towards the fossil fuel system. And having a giant industry with so much money and political power, having a vested interest in making it easier to build renewables, that's a big benefit. So I like you have very valid concerns that are being brought up here, but I just want to make that one quick point that like having big tech have a vested interest in building renewables could be quite a big benefit.
I appreciate that, Alex, because I'm usually Susie Sunshine, but when you get me rolling about like Zuckerberg and stuff, I kind of veer from my norm.
I'd like to add something, building up on what Alex said. We have talked a lot about the issues and pitfalls, but also as a solutions-oriented thinker, I think about what can we do about it today. And we have two options. We come up with totally new creative solutions because this is a new era, or can we leverage existing problem-oriented solutions-oriented approaches? So I have thought about doing something like movie ratings for AI products, like PGR or something. For example, I would rate Grok's image and video generation as a total R. You can basically do all kinds of deep fakes or even inappropriate content. And perhaps, OpenAI is somewhere a little bit for mature artists. So I think some leveraging of ratings like Energy Star ratings for data centers, carbon credits that are being done, something similar for the responsible use of resources, and the end product itself. What effect does it have the end user base in terms of mental health, or even changing the perception? I mean, does deep fakes or does it change their attitudes and lead them to inappropriate or unwanted behaviors, things like that? And when we talk about data centers, they're essentially buildings, right? So we have green buildings, we have LEED. Are they doing it in a responsible way? So I think there are existing solutions, existing tools that we can leverage and adapt it to this thing and do it today, right now, and make big tech accountable, responsible, or even somewhat committed on paper, by word of mouth, if not paper, somehow balance their profit seeking as well as being accountable. So I think a legal framework should come there. And being blunt, I think the policy making and the legal framework is somewhat behind the lag. So the effective use of AI in the legal process itself is needed. Accelerate recognition of the risks, impacts, the need for legislation, the need for governance should be there. It cannot work at the pace that is being done today, committees and subcommittees. It has to keep up with the pace of AI and make it really responsible. But I think we have effective tools today that we can leverage and then seek for new solutions, new things to do when we come to the known unknowns, what I talked about. So, and we come up with that. The known knowns, we have tools today. We just have to think creatively, and as I said, we have to make AI to solve its own problems.
I agree. I think the legal framework has a long way to catch up, but it is getting there. There's been a lot of controversy recently over like AI hallucinated citations and legal briefs. So I think that's kind of forcing the legal system to grapple with AI and better regulate it. So kind of like Alex, I'm trying to see the positive side of like, it's not good that all these lawyers are submitting briefs with AI hallucinated citations, but that may also be what kind of triggers better regulation.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. So another topic to discuss can be, what does a future look like where AI strengthens both clean energy and ocean protection? Anyone can start, like anyone who wants to answer.
I can jump in if no one else wants to.
Yeah,
So,
good.
yeah, I think the really interesting thing about AI for me is bringing in people with all these different backgrounds. So, one example of AI for oceans that I don't think we touched on previously is like soundscape ecology. So, being able to listen and monitor for whales, especially in shipping lanes, can help prevent boat strikes, which is one of the really significant causes of mortality in right whales and these other endangered species. So I actually have like a couple family members who worked in soundscape ecology. They traveled the world like recording rainforests. So if you've ever been in like Rainforest Cafe or one of those areas that have like ambient nature sounds, like that's kind of the core of what soundscape ecology is. It's like listening for animals in the environment. And then with AI now, we're able to actually recognize those acoustic signatures and match them up, in some cases, to specific species. And on land, there's also this amazing startup called Rainforest Connection that has an AI algorithm that detects logging and then is able to get that information to indigenous communities on the ground so they can better protect against illegal logging in their territories. So to me, it's really like the future of AI is really accessible. It's where it's most needed. There's lower barriers, lower cost of entry, and it's really collaborative. Like you bring in people who have these really diverse skill sets and didn't maybe work in AI in the past.
Okay, adding on to that, and especially focusing on oceans, what is in the 70% of the body we call ocean on Earth, right? What is it there? A lot of the oceans is actually unexplored, right? And we don't clearly understand what role does the oceans, the tides, and everything play in our overall planet weather. So fascinating innovation from NVIDIA is to do a digital twin of the Earth itself, of the planet. And oceans are 70% components of that, and we need to understand them much better. And the good thing about AI is it lets us do things at a scale which is normally beyond the capability of most humans, even collective humans. But here we can really understand an intractable issue of understanding what is in and what lurks inside the ocean. What role does it play? How does climate affect it? What role, and what do they do to our weather, our patterns, or this thing? They're saying that the ice caps in the polar oceans are melting, and that's going to create more ocean body. So how will that affect us, right? So I think putting the vast amounts of information processing, reasoning, and inferencing to better understand the role of oceans and what's in it. And for hundreds and thousands of years, we have lived with them, lived on them, benefited from them, but we really don't understand what makes it tick. So I think that's going to be one of the most interesting application of this thing. And who knows, if you understand the ocean better, maybe we can discover better clean energy sources. We may discover some minerals or fuels or materials that can make energy production that much better, or even generating energy from oceans, through geothermally or through tidal waves. So yeah, so we have to somehow understand what we have and preserve what we have been given.
I think also adding to that, especially when it comes to generating research around AI and ocean sustainability, in the emerging body of literature, there have already been like mentions of incorporating indigenous knowledge or going or bridging the science as well as the indigenous knowledge to create sustainable solutions. However, there's also something to heed in that to not necessarily like co-opt the knowledge of other individuals solely for the purpose of advancing AI in terms of oceans and not giving credit. I think that would also be something to take note of. Like, this knowledge has existed for years. It's not new, it's not novel. So it's important to do it in a balanced way that pays homage to the culture that you're referencing, but also I guess also adequately incorporates the science background as well as AI as well.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for answering that question. So the next question I'm going to ask all of you is that where do you think partnerships matter most, like in policy, technology, or grassroots organizing? Who wants to start with that?
I think I can start.
Sure.
Um, I think it may depend on the context. in which whatever AI intervention is being implemented in, as well as the geopolitics at the time, a lot can come into play in terms of like what partnerships should be prioritized. Um, for example, if it's an intervention or a situation or a product or whatever it is, ran, assisted by, created by AI or is AI, being implemented into a situation where you're using a specific population as a test or as like a case, then in that situation, you wouldn't necessarily go into that country and first consult like policymakers, especially if they have no, how do I say, skin in the game or personal experience with the outcome that you're trying to address. You'd probably have to be a bit more strategic in terms of approaching the local community. Do your research beforehand. Are there any specific ways that I approach X community? Who is my point of contact in this community, etc. As well as doing a lot of background research on the context, the social context of the community, the political context of the community, the economic context of the community beforehand, because it's one thing to come in with your own idea for what could help X situation, but it's another thing to have longevity in that specific context. And that all depends on how well you tailor your intervention to the specific whatever whatever outcome you're trying to you can, how do I say, you can tailor your intervention to cater to whatever outcome you're trying to have or get out of interacting with that community. But what is going to be the shelf life of that? Is it scalable? Is it relevant to the people that you're studying or the people who are incorporated in this study? So I think that's how partnerships could come into play, or how we may think about what partnerships to prioritize.
Thank you, Lydia.
I agree. I think having partnership agreements or some kind of governance framework is really critical, like from jump, because the problem we're seeing now with AI, which I kind of touched on earlier and has been discussed as well, is that the legal system right now is kind of behind and really needs to catch up. And I think trying to build a governance framework around a technology that's already impacting people, it's kind of like trying to build an airplane midair. So I think there needs to be more like proactive thought about who does this impact, what are the risks, who needs to be in the room, who needs to be at the table.
Yeah, I'd like to add something very quickly. Is the word partnerships, the connotation of it takes a whole new meaning in the context of AI. And if I put my management hat for a second, the question remains to be asked: why are we doing this, and for whom? Right? What is this all? Is this just a shiny object thing because we have the technology to do it, or is there a bigger scheme in all of this? So I think going beyond a business point of view, from business to consumer or business to business enterprises, we have to start thinking about business to society. So the partnership takes on a whole new meaning, that we have a bigger segment that we are going to affect, and we have to partner with that segment effectively so that we can establish trust, safety, and responsibility at this. Otherwise, it's gonna blow up in ways where the risks that we couldn't even think of or imagine are going to happen, right? So the partnerships is something that we are affecting a larger scale of people and consuming and at a cost of certain resources, and put it to problems that really matter. I mean, if you ask me bluntly, I think creating cute videos and marketing is great, but it has I think, better used to solving things like environment pollution, right? Pollution in countries like China and India, which is really causing health crisis, traffic problems, which is a bane of every major city and society. I mean, we still haven't solved the traffic problem, right? And I mean, can we solve that that mess that we have in Los Angeles in terms of traffic? Can we plan, you know, can we plan building of cities in a better way so that, you know, we have a better environment? So I think it should be put in such a way that we partner with the innovators, partner with the end users, partnered with societies in such a way that it really solves wicked and intractable problems. And that's where the real value of AI comes. If humans as a collective could not solve certain problems and just bandage and go with it, is it time to use this new technology to, you know, bring something that gives us progress at all?
Yeah, thank you, Harsha. So I want to ask the audience to ask their questions in the comments. We're gonna answer those in a few minutes. And yeah, Alex, you want to add something to what others said for this question?
No, I've got nothing.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so the other question is how can equity and justice remain central to AI-powered climate solutions? Anyone wants to start with that?
I can jump in if no one else wants to. So
Sure.
there's an emerging area of scholarship called like data sovereignty, which I think Lydia touched on a little bit, but it's essentially the idea that if indigenous knowledge is used in the development of these new technologies, then there should be like sovereignty over the data and there should be ownership by the people participating in giving that knowledge. I've done a little bit of like pro bono work in the past with tribes, and it's so important to respect like closed versus open cultural practices. So I think as we're incorporating that knowledge into this technology, there needs to be also like awareness of where that knowledge, like who owns that knowledge, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it totally does. Harsha, Lydia, Alex, anything about that?
Awkward. I remember one of our last podcasts, somebody was talking about ancestral intelligence. And like I just felt like that was the best combination of words I'd heard in a while. And it was in regards to the food supply and things that people that don't live in big cities actually care about, like their clean water, like their food supply, like their farms, like their farming techniques, all that kind of stuff. And I think this is all wildly interrelated and interesting. But I can't help but wonder, because we're already seeing it happen, right? With people who are cleaning data and being traumatized, and we're taking their water and jobs and stuff like that. So uh, outside of kind of stating all that, I wonder if anybody else kind of sees the interrelated patterns with that kind of thing.
I definitely do, especially considering that these data centers are not typically located or situated near high income areas. So it's like, how do we balance? Yes, we're going to, on one side, take AI, bring it into a socially disadvantaged community, when at the end of the day, the AI could potentially make that inequality broader. So I definitely get what you're saying.
Yes, that's exactly my thoughts. Was the inequality is going to get worse. But then I have another question: why can't they build data centers away from everything? Harsha,
Yeah, yeah.
knew you didn't know the answer.
I want to add a little bit on the previous thing. Is I am a believer that data and information should be a common resource available to humanity, and we should not be in a state where AI becomes a leverage or a weapon, and it can be used as a tool for the country dynamics, right? A country with more AI capabilities should not be in a position to subjugate countries with other things or information here. So, repeat your question again, Anne, please, for the data centers.
Yeah, why can't they be built in, like, maybe not Antarctica, but maybe Antarctica, or like deep in the desert, or just in places where the impact, people are kind of insulated from the impact. Like, why don't they build them in the places where they used to test the nuclear bombs, way out in the middle of the desert? Like, and then that also leads me to, they spend trillions of dollars on these data centers, and then somebody kind of figures out, hey, we know how to do this a better way where you won't need these. You don't think they're going to hide that technology until they feel like they've gotten their money's worth out of those data centers?
Yeah, so there's both a technology part as well as the practical aspects of building data centers. Yeah, I mean, theoretically, you could go and build in Antarctica, but the cost and the effort and all that it takes to support building it, it's practically not possible, right? What's there in Antarctica? Even humans cannot live there, very effectively in the environment, leave alone build a massive thing. Perhaps it could be done, but it comes at an enormous cost. So, and the second thing is there's technical aspects, the access to the AI compute. There's things like latency and availability. So you need to make it happen where the end user base is, and the responsiveness or the availability may be a factor in the end user experience if you put it in remote places and things like that. So a balance between what can be feasibly and economically done versus the tactical pragmatic aspects is very paramount. The last thing I would want to happen is some AI data centers going and upsetting the emperor penguins, and maybe cause distress or even extinction. You never know. So we should do it in a pragmatic way so that impacts is managed to a certain extent. I would rather have it in places where we have already screwed up things, so we can it's already screwed up, so we can basically go up. We don't want to go and mess with pristine areas. But yeah, I don't know, but I think it's something that for forward-thinking policymakers and leaders and technology innovators have to come together to make it happen quite in a responsible, less impactful way.
Thank you, Harsha. You know what? One more though. Why big, huge ones instead of lots of little ones? What, I know you're working on small ones, so I think
That's a great question, and that is basically the premise behind nano kernel's strategy. Actually, why big data centers and why not micro data centers? And that's what I'm working on. I think it's about democratization of innovation. These only very few companies can build and manage this mega data centers, right? And we are talking about cost, investment, resources, and skills available. Even the compute data centers in other parts of the world, like Asia, Africa, they're being done by very few companies, right? and all the hardware, this thing. So we've asked the question is, how do we make this in a democratized way? How do we roll it out to companies of all sizes in such a way? And not have to worry about the lag time between deciding to doing something with AI and actually getting it. I mean, building a data center takes years, if not decades, and make it fully operational is not a joke. So that's why we are focused on micro data centers. Is something that you can get order like out of like a box, right? You can get it, and you can jumpstart your innovation or your AI leverage and have things happen in a fairly quick and cost-effective way. And then if you need to go on to bigger things because this micro boxes does not fit your needs, then you go on to bigger things. But the barrier to entry and the barrier to realization from your brilliant idea to actually having AI make that idea happen and deliver impact is what we try to overcome. So, the monopoly of the big companies, there are very few companies who know actually to build and manage data centers. The monopoly is not good for business. It will not lead to exponential innovation, and you never know. As Apple started in a garage in Cupertino with a brilliant idea of making personal computers where everybody laughed at the people doing it. Who knows, a brilliant AI idea is there looking, and they just lack the resources, they lack the compute to do it, and this we can make it happen, at least give them a start. So that's the idea of smaller AI micro data centers. And also that implies that we have lesser footprint, lesser environmental impact to deal with in the beginning. I hardly think a micro data center will tap out any town's water supply in doing it. In fact, it may not even need cooling. But again, the more tactical thing is to enablement, democratization, and give all people with brilliant ideas a start to do it, and not have to depend on the big tech cloud platforms and things like that.
And does anybody know what's China doing?
China is pursuing their own path, right? So their strategies to reduce their reliance on external non-Chinese technology in every aspect, and in terms of hardware, chips, and everything. But the Chinese are not averse to doing and making things happen at a cost to their environment, their people and citizens. I think there's enormous impact to their resources, and they don't really care about the impact to people. So the monitoring of citizens and this thing, they somehow want to win the AI arms race, quote unquote. So I think they will take what it takes to do that, and at least be this. So it's a different way of coming it from a democratic point of view on AI, and a totalitarian or authoritarian view of using AI. Hopefully, for the sake of humanity, a balance would come between the both.
I also have something to briefly add to that if we have the time.
Yeah. Yeah, we have 7 minutes, and I think there is only one question. So, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So when we think of in terms of China or countries like China who didn't necessarily go through industrialization at the same time as countries in the global north, such as the US, etc. I think there's also something important to play or important that comes into play when we talk about, oh, AI and the advent of it in this specific day and age. So a lot of developing countries, the dis or developing versus developed countries, the distinction tends to come at the advent of industrialization. And in industrializing, developing countries had more resources to be able to developed countries or countries we deemed as developed today had more resources to be able to industrialize at a certain speed in comparison to developing countries that we see today. A lot of developing countries are now, or formerly developing countries are now moving out of that category into developed country, one of them being China. And I think one of the things to consider is that a lot of countries in the global north had their time to industrialize and thus build the capital to be able to do things in more resource rich or resource backed ways. And now a lot of developing countries are basically following or getting into that advent that already happened for developed countries. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind when we talk about AI usage and AI generation and the monopolizing of AI, especially in developing countries, because we could similarly say the same thing for already developed countries and the advent of industrialization. So there is a clear imbalance in that regard. And I think we should be very careful of how we perceive or how we think of certain things as like maybe this country views it as this way. And it's just like a case of, oh, continuous environmental pollution. There's also a sense of developing countries or developed countries have done things like this in the past. So it's not a very foreign or shocking revelation that developing countries or countries moving out of the developing category are now repeating or seeing instances of like high pollution at the cost of people's health or people's livelihood. Very similar things happened during the Industrial Revolution. So I think that's an important parallel to keep in the back of your mind when you're looking at these headlines about developing countries and new technology, etc.
Yes, thank you, Lydia. That was a great point to mention. And so we have one question, which is not for the panelists, but for us. So yeah, you can listen to this later on our YouTube channel, Swarm Community's YouTube channel, and it's gonna be on the Swarmathon's podcast on Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple Podcasts as well. So yeah, and I want to wrap up our conversation and by thanking you, our panelists, for sharing your insights, and to all of you in the audience for joining us today and listening to us. We explored how AI can accelerate clean energy, safeguard oceans, and strengthens vulnerable communities, while reminding ourselves that governance, safeguards, and partnerships are essential to making it work for everyone all around the world. So, and as we are wrapping up, I want to celebrate that this was the last episode of this season of SWARMathon, and thank you for being part of the journey with us, for exploring inclusion and equity to justice and governance, and now to clean energy and ocean's futures. And and as I mentioned before at the beginning, this is not a goodbye, and we'll be back soon with a brand new season of Swarmathon and new topics and new voices and opportunities to imagine an AI-powered future that works for all of us. Yeah, until then, I want to thank you everyone to being part of this community, and let's keep learning, building, and collaborating toward a sustainable and just future. Yeah. Uh, do you want to add anything else? I want to ask the panelists.
Yeah,
Any
thank
final
you.
thoughts? Yeah, sure. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and bye. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks.